Did you guys grow up on Goosebumps? What made you want to like hop on this project?
I was a huge fan of the Goosebumps books growing up. They were, in fact, the first series that made reading feel fun as opposed to like a task that my parents or my teachers made me do. So yeah, I piled through them as a kid in the '90s, and now my oldest daughter is in the middle of them too. She cannot get enough. So yeah, huge fan, and exciting to watch my kids become fans as well.
Yeah, I used to steal them from my sister's bookshelf, so I felt like I was reading something that I shouldn't be allowed to read, which made them even scarier. And I loved the books growing up, and I also watched the original series too. So I grew up a Goosebumps fan, and then it was sort of fortuitous that the company I started working with also did the first Goosebumps movie and the second one, and so it really came full circle when we got the opportunity to make this into a TV show.
Obviously, you have Rob Letterman also who directed that first Goosebumps movie in 2015, now bringing this to life as well with you guys. And what is it like to go from like that same source material of those Goosebumps books by R.L. Stine, but kind of bring us a different product?
When Rob and I started talking about doing this as a TV show, we knew we wanted to do something that took the iconic stories and do an elevated take on them. So it was important to us that the show be super funny and dramatic and scary, but still honor the original source material. So in collaboration with Scholastic, who publishes the books, we approached Nick Stoller, who Conor works with, who's also incredibly funny, to co-create it with Rob. And all of us knew each other really well beforehand. So it kind of worked out to put this thing together.
And how did you guys choose like those 5 iconic Goosebumps books to focus on? There's so many to go through, but you got some of those classics, the Haunted Mask, the Worms. So what was it that made you choose these specific ones?
It was important to us, first of all, that this series, unlike the previous, was not anthological, so that there was one sort of mystery that took our same characters through the arc of the entire first season. And so the architecture of that season is the first 5 episodes follow each of our 5 main high school characters, who are also haunted by a totem from one of 5 of the more popular books. And so I think we landed on these 5 because the very relatable nugget, the issue that each of these kids are dealing with that kind of elevate to the horrific place, are very interesting, relatable character traits. So, for Isaiah, it was the weight of the world on his shoulders, financial burden. He has to be a football star. And so to get a Polaroid camera that pops out a photo that shows that he's injured and maybe can't play football anymore, that's a really exciting way to launch into a season. So yeah, the short answer is each of those books had super relatable character issues that we thought would be fun to play with.
You'll see that we're dealing with 5 different books, but there's stuff pulled from all of the books throughout the entire season. There's a lot of Easter eggs for Goosebumps fans like you that if you read all the books, you'll see different elements and different characters from a lot of the books that populate the entire show.
I love that. I was going to say, already the show's set in Port Lawrence. I'm imagining that's a Robert Lawrence Stine reference. So is there any other Easter eggs that you guys like that we should look out for that maybe are one of your favorites that are coming up?
I know a fan favorite character is Slappy. And we can say that Slappy does make an appearance in, I think, a very unexpected way about midway through the season.
I'm excited for that. And you mentioned Slappy's return. There's been a lot of murderous dolls lately. We got Chucky, we got Megan. What is it about Slappy that you think kind of stands the test of time and kind of has him up against all these other icons?
Slappy, it's
I think
basically just what's that?
I think he's the OG. I think
he's the first one. I think he's the first one. And just seeing that jaw unhinge, every single time and talk and being so sinister while also looking so kind of rudimentary, put together is always scary. And I think throughout all of those dolls, I think Slappy is the scariest, where seeing their eyes go to the side while their head is staying still is always the scariest with Slappy.
Totally. And Stine did an incredible thing, which I think is a huge reason for why the books are so resonant, so popular, and so timeless, which is start with everyday relatable things that people will see throughout their life, throughout their day, in their house, out in the world, whether it's a camera or worms or a cuckoo clock or a doll. and then elevate those to a super, super scary place. So I think it all starts in that familiarity and then turning it on its head a little bit, which hopefully we captured in the series as well.
And Slappy is a ventriloquist dummy. So anytime that starts talking on its own, it's always scary.
Absolutely. You guys mentioned the Cuckoo Clock of Doom. I feel like that's my first core memory of reading a Goosebumps book, is being like terrified that I was gonna like Benjamin Button back in time with that cuckoo clock. But spinning off of that, you know, these first 5 episodes, I feel like that we've gotten to see very nostalgic, but also really modern. You know, you got like that Gen Z down packed. So how did you kind of balance that?
It relates to what Conor was saying earlier, in that these kids find these totems. And at first, in a lot of the episodes, they actually embrace them and they make their lives easier. So you mentioned the Cuckoo Clock of Doom, and that happens in the 3rd episode with our character, James is a super popular, funny kid, class clown. But we learned that his issue is that he doesn't really know who he is as a person. He's a little bit of a chameleon. And so he actually uses the cuckoo clock to his advantage, and he finds out that there's different versions of himself running around once this cuckoo clock starts working. And he actually tries to embrace that and use that to his advantage. But it also plays upon his core insecurity, which is not knowing who he is as a person and having a lot of different personalities. And same with Isaiah with the haunted camera, and our character in the 2nd episode who finds the haunted mask gives her courage that she doesn't usually have. So the totems really hang on to our character's core issue and then magnify them.
And speaking of that, how did this cast come together? I mean, you got so many great players in this.
Well, it was important to us that that all of the actors that we cast had real comedy chops, could really land a joke, exceptional timing, but also drama to play the nuance of being scared or of being insecure, or, you know, just basically be able to personify all of those high school issues, you know, coming to the surface. And then, yeah, so, you know, Justin Long being one of the first that we cast, who resume includes just the funniest movies and television shows of all time, as well as some of the scariest. Like, he was just coming off of Barbarians when we cast him in this. So he hit that, you know, narrow purple in the Venn diagram of very funny and knows horror very well. Rob Hubel and Rachel Harris as well, you know, come from a comedy world, but really have great drama chops. And then for the kids, for the 5 high school students, it was mostly unknowns or relative unknowns. I think a lot of people are going to discover these actors here. We auditioned literally hundreds of kids, and these 5 rose to the top and were just so exceptional, and, you know, immediately created a chemistry that was really fun to watch, and hopefully, you know, we'll get to see play out for many seasons to come.
So you guys got plans for more?
Here's to hoping.
Hope so.
I hope
There's
so
a lot of
too.
stories to pull from and a lot of awkward teen issues to hit on. So those are never going to get old.
Infinite.
Absolutely. And, you know, switching gears a tiny bit, Pavun, I know, like, this is a heightened world, and you're also working on the very heightened world of Gen V that's coming out. What was it like for you to go from, you know, from Goosebumps and that world back to the world of the boys, but, you know, for a younger group of people?
Gen V is a spinoff of The Boys, and that takes place in college, which college issues are very specific on their own, and especially college where superheroes are taught how to be good people, where in reality they're actually the worst of the worst. But we're dealing with high school issues in Goosebumps, which are even scarier, in my opinion, than college issues, because you're really dealing with stuff that as a formative adult, like before going to college. And I think the high school stuff on its own is just a really ripe territory to do shows. And so even though the tone of Goosebumps is very different than the tone of Gen V, I think what they have in common is that they're both mashups of comedy, of horror. There's a lot of adventure in both of them. And they really deal with these issues that kids in those various timeframes of their lives face.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, like you mentioned, like Isaiah is really has the weight of the world on his shoulders, and it's interesting to see that in Gen V, a lot of the characters, in order to kind of access their powers, have to kind of do some dark, kind of scary things that, you know, we would maybe be worried about in the regular world. So that's very, very fascinating. I was wondering if you could share a little bit, maybe more about like, I don't know, like, kind of like dark connection, if you will.
I think a lot of times growing up, you have to deal with what your parents did before you. and you have to deal with the ramifications of that. And in Gen V, this is the first generation of superheroes that learned that they were injected with Compound V, that they weren't born superheroes, that their parents made them like that, even though that was a horrific experience growing up. And in Goosebumps, what we're going to learn in series is that what our kids are dealing with in the show is actually a direct result of something that their parents did while they were in high school. So they're dealing with the sins of their parents in a very different way. And in Goosebumps, we actually follow their parents back when they were in high school in the 90s too, and draw a direct line between something they did that our kids are dealing with now. And a lot of times kids, whether you're in high school or in college, you have to take issues into your own hands. You can't rely on anyone else, especially your parents, who are just as flawed as kids are many times. And so I think there's a lot of parallels between both shows there.
What are these parents doing?
Who knows?
Well, I love that it centers these young people and gives them such a strong voice. And I'm excited to see the rest of the season. So I want to thank you guys so much for your time. I'm excited.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Great to meet you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And just don't take that sweatshirt off until October 13th. Keep it on.
Yeah. Consider subscribing if you like my videos, and if you want to talk more TV and movies with me outside of the comments section, check out my Patreon at patreon.com/kmaldo. If you like this one, you can check out more of my videos right over here. See ya!